live.
Okay, it says setting up your meeting for Facebook Live.
Says it on my side, live on Facebook. So I don't know if that actually is live.
Oh, I see it. Okay. So, hi everyone.
Hey, what's happening?
Welcome. So, thanks for joining us. This is a part of, it's part of the New York City Jericho Movement's Dare to Struggle series, and we have a great panel of folks that are going to share their experience, share their stories, and we're really looking forward to this conversation. My name is George Chang. I am a member of the New York City chapter of the Jericho Amnesty Movement. For folks who are not familiar, Jericho is it's been around for the last 22 years, and our mission is to support and to free as many U.S.-held political prisoners as possible. We also do a lot of support work for other folks who are other folks who are political prisoners elsewhere, but our focus has been in the U.S. And so today we have a great panelists. We have a great group of folks who are going to share their stories. They're all children of current and current political prisoners. I'm going to ask them a couple questions, and hopefully they're going to be able to they're going to be able to share they're going to do their own intros, and then so the questions we're going to pose to them to start are just to have them present their names, their preferred gender pronoun, who are they, if they can tell us who their revolutionary parents are, where they grew up, and just to kind of keep it light. It's been a pretty tough couple of months with COVID and what we're seeing out in the streets. So I guess we're gonna ask them to share what has brought them some joy this week. All right, and I think we're gonna start with Teresa Schultz.
Hi, thank you, Jorge, and thank you, Jericho, for giving us this platform. My name is Teresa Schultz. I am the daughter of Russell Maroon Schultz. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and you can use the pronoun she.
Anything you want to share about your this past week that's been positive for you?
Right. So this past week, I was in a good place where, as I do know that when youth are involved, especially in making change, that a lot of change has come out of youth movement. So I'm very much in a good place. I would like to see more focus on the Panthers, the political prisoners who are still in prison, who were doing the same thing like 50 years ago. So they were on the front lines the same way our young folks today are on the front lines. And I hoping that they hear this and we introduce them to those who have fought before them here in the United States. Although there's been many uprising, but we have some elderly prisoners, Panthers, who are still in prison. So I'm hoping that type of information gets out and it resonates with our young folks.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Teresa. Thank you for that intro. Next, we're going to move on to Talib Shakur.
All right, peace and blessings, y'all. Just like the brother said, my name is Talib Shakur. I'm one of the sons of Mutulu Shakur. I was born and raised in South Jamaica, Queens. act like I knew my father all my life because I just found out that he's my biological father no more than 4 years ago. So it's an honor to know who he is, and it's an honor to learn more about him. A lot of y'all know more about my own father than I know. He's been in prison for over 33 years. He's supposed to have been released 3 years ago, matter of fact, but due to unfortunate situations, they keep him up in there. It's a sad situation right now because here it is, he applied for compassionate relief. They denied him compassionate relief, but yet he's dealing with a lot of medical issues. One of them is dealing with bone marrow cancer. He's diabetic, and he have a couple other underlying issues. So he definitely qualified for compassionate relief. And not only that, he way past his due date to be released. And this is one of the men that was focused on the ability helping our people in the struggle for equal rights and social justice. And just like a lot of brothers and sisters are battling for right now for our equal rights, protesting and things such. So, I know this is going to be a extensive interview, so I will add more
All right.
later on down the line.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Kasise Siddiqui.
Hey, peace, everyone. My name is Kasise Siddiqui. Preferred pronoun is she, her. I was born in Queens, raised in Brooklyn. My parents are Pamela Hanna. She's a former Black Panther from the Queens branch, and my father is Kamal Siddiqui. He also is a former Black Panther and now serving a life sentence in Augusta State Medical Prison. And just to feel to this week, in terms of something that was positive, I had the opportunity to spend a day with my son yesterday, Malik Siddiqui Torres. And I'm just very much proud of him. He's 22 years old. He's a young Black man. And he just graduated from Ithaca College. So I'm very proud of him.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do we have Mike Africa Jr. on the line? Mike, is that you? I'm not sure. It looks like he may not be on the line. So we're going to move on to, and this is a sort of a late addition to the panel, but a very much welcome addition. We have Kakuya Shakur.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Kakuya. I was born in New York. My parents, my mother is Sada Shakur. She was a member of the Black Panther Party and of the Black Liberation Army. She is in exile. And my father is also Kamal Siddiqui, because to say is my sister. And so he is serving a life sentence in Augusta, Georgia. And he was, as my sister said, a member of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army. As far as something that brought me joy this week, my middle son graduated from high school. So that brought me a lot of joy because it has been a lot of work to get both of my sons out of high school. One is already out of college and this one's on his way to college. So that was just a huge moment. And yeah, just, two Black men, and I have a little girl. So it was just nice for us to get together and celebrate my middle son, his accomplishments. We tried to get some food in a restaurant, but given COVID, everything was closed. But we got some food and went to a park and had a little bit of normalcy. saw some people, enjoyed some sunshine, and had a beautiful day. So yeah, that brought me a lot of joy.
Fantastic. That's great. Yeah, I mean, we definitely need to find ways to connect with people and with the outside. I mean, I feel like with the last 3 months or so, everybody's just been cooped inside. There needs to be some space to get out. So I'm gonna start with some questions about just your experiences growing up as children of revolutionary parents and political prisoners. Just kind of if you guys can share with us what are some of the challenges you guys have faced, what you're currently facing, and I think that would really help for folks, the audience, to understand what it's like to be growing up in that kind of environment. So Teresa, can you share some of that?
Okay, sure. Well, I was raised in Philadelphia, as you heard, and I grew up across the street directly from the elementary school that I attended. My mother wasn't a revolutionary like my father, so therefore there wasn't much said about my dad in the 70s in our homes, because my mother was too nervous and afraid that, especially during 1970 and 1972, that one of her children would be picked up off the street, interrogated by police, and we lived that kind of life. So I didn't have know a lot about my dad when he was underground or anything like that, because my mother didn't talk about it. It wasn't until I was in elementary school, and I was around 8 years of age, and our house was raided around 1971. And the school that I attended was evacuated, but the kids weren't sent home. They were just told to get out of the building. It was all kind of stories that my dad is on a run and he could have dug a tunnel beneath the school to get into our home, and all of those kind of stories. So therefore, I'm in a schoolyard with the rest of the kids from my school, and I notice where the focus is, and it's on our home. And all the kids are focused, their eyes are focused there. And I'm just gripping that fence because I see my mom is surrounded by the FBI, the state police of Pennsylvania, and the local Philadelphia Police Department. And I'm in uproar because there's nothing I can do. And I see my mother outside and they're going all through the home. So that kind of ripped my life apart. I'm still in elementary school. All of the kids know. And I really believe, I don't know for sure, I believe we were the only kids that had a parent in prison back then in the 70s. So that was over. I graduated the bicentennial year from the 6th grade in 1976. By this time, 1970, before I graduated, my dad was captured and charged with killing a police officer. The kids bullied the hell out of me. When my dad escaped, the first time, my brother was like the hero of the school because kids were asking him, when can your dad escape again? Because we can get out of school again. That didn't go well with me. So then I leave elementary school. This is 1976. And I'm saying, yes, I'm getting a whole new start in junior high. But then in 1977, my first year there, my dad liberates himself again. And the bullying was on an all-time high, a totally different level from the elementary school.
Wow. And
a kid had brought in a newspaper article, it stated It was the Philadelphia Daily News, that members of that community in which my dad had liberated himself from that prison in their area, near Huntington Prison, were able to shoot on sight if they seen my dad. And they weren't police officials or anything like that. So my whole thing was, I'm in a new school. I'm in junior high. It's 1977. I got to get that newspaper. I'm starting to know. I don't want these kids to know that this is who my dad is. And it turned out to be the worst day of my life because I'm fighting folks. I get suspended because I don't want that article to get out. So then my dad was on a 28-day, there was a 28-day manhunt, shoot to kill. And I'm seeing this every night on the local news. And I'm confused because I'm still young. I see people cheering at the television. At that time, we had one television. And family members and neighbors were cheering, "Run, Russell, run." And I'm really confused because I'm thinking, this isn't good. But yet, folks are cheering him on. And now I know different. So I get suspended, I go back to school, and I just zone out. I'm ignoring all of the bullying and the stories about my dad. Then I get to high school in 1980. I'm 16 years old. My dad liberates himself. And this time, things just totally changed for me. I went through my teenage years into my 20s just wilding out. It wasn't until, so that's, I don't want to go on and on, but that's what my life was like early on. I'll be 56 years old. And I've been battling this thing with my dad being who he is since I was 8 years old. I don't hold that against my dad because I know he was doing exactly what youth are doing today, some 48 plus years. The same stuff is happening. The same brutality, police brutality, and people being gunned down by the police. So I'm going to end it with, you know how we get rain, but the rain comes and goes.
Mm-hmm.
The rain inside of me never leaves. It never goes. And there's a storm inside, and the water is up to here, and there are no floodgates. So that's where I've been since that little 8-year-old child till today.
Mm. Wow, that's really powerful. I do want to do a quick introduction. I think it looks like Mike Africa Jr. has joined us on the call. So Mike, if we can unmute you, can you,
Yes.
if you can do a quick little intro, quick little intro, give us your name, your preferred gender pronoun, who your revolutionary parents are, where you grew up, and what's brought you some joy this week.
Okay, my name is Mike Africa Jr. Thanks for having me on the Zoom, John. I don't remember everything you wanted me to say. My parents are Mike and Debbie Africa. They just got out of prison a couple years ago after spending 40 years in prison. I'm from Philly. I'm living in Philly right now, just leaving a rally to stop police terror. We were at 6221 Osage Avenue, the site of the bombing when the police dropped the bomb on our family in 1985. And the rally is just ended, so that's where I'm coming from now. What else did you want me to say?
You have any good positive anything positive for you within the last week or so that you want to share with us?
Well, the positivity that I'm feeling is the things that's happening all around the world. I mean, there's so many people that are standing up and standing with us and marching with us on this issue of police terror. The Breonna Taylor law passed, and I mean, that's a victory not because they follow their laws, but because they wouldn't have done it without the pressure from the people. And that is energy for the people so that they can see that the power of the people, the people, how we say the people united will never be defeated. So, and then like, just to see all of these statues toppled and the Rizzo statue was taken down here in Philadelphia, that's a victory for us.
That's tremendous.
Almost cried tears of joy when I seen that thing hovering in the air from the helicopter or crane or whatever it was. So like, and we just gotta keep the momentum going, That's what I'm feeling from the people. Energy.
Fantastic. All right. So let's go back to Talib. Can you want to share with us some of your what it was like for you to grow up as a child of a revolutionary parent?
Yes, no question. To be honest with you, I didn't grow up like that because I never knew who my biological father was all my life. So me growing up, I'm growing up in a household with my mother and 4 of my sisters. So what's going on is I was trying to figure out where's my father at. I was told that a certain man was my father, but I never seen him a day in my life. So I'm just living my life trying to, connect dots and trying to help out the house as much as possible at the young age. But I drifted into the street on my form of helping out the house and drifting into the streets and got into the life of crime and ended up spending over 16 years incarcerated due to certain offense. And I truly feel that if I had my father in my life would have been different travel, I wasn't raised political and none of the such. I mean, I came from a loving family, definitely that. And I learned about my father through my travels because me growing up, a lot of family and friends kept on asking me, do I know Jarrell Williams? And I had to be honest with them. I don't know who that is. I hear amongst the family, circles, they speak about a Jarrell this, a Jarrell that, because they grew up with him. That was like the neighborhood family, friends, and how that go about. How every neighborhood has a linkage to certain individuals. So he was like a champion in the neighborhood and throughout the boroughs. I didn't know who he was directly. So as I'm traveling, living my life, even when I ended up incarcerated, people kept on still that. But now the name changed. It wasn't Jarrell at that time. Now it was, wow, you favor Mutulu Shakur. You catered to him. And I always had to tell him, no, I don't know who that is. The one day we sit on my sister and I sitting on our bed, and a program come on TV, and it was America's Most Wanted. So they was looking at the picture on the screen, looking at me, looking at the picture on the screen, looking at me, and then one of them said, "Wow, you better ask mommy something." You know what I mean? So I just shut it off like it was about nothing. I just kept on living my life. So it took this one man on a train when I came home. I was on my way to work, and this one man, he was dressed in African garment with a walking stick. When I stood up to get off the train, I noticed him looking at me before the stop came. But just the antennas rose like, why is this man looking at me? So when he stood up, I stood up. And I was about to walk up the train. So he got, maybe a foot away from me. And he said, "Excuse me, young man, are you Dr. Mutulu Shakur's son?" I said to myself, here we go again, you know? So I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't know the man. So when I walked off the train, I was walking to the right, he was walking to the left. Something told me to turn around before I hit the stairs. And soon as I turned around, he was still standing in the platform, on the platform, just looking at me, shaking his head like, wow, I can't believe this type of thing. So in my mind, I said, okay, that's it. I'm gonna go ask my mother, you know, the deal, what was, you know, what's really going on. So when I got the chance to call her, I asked her, Mom, I'm gonna ask you a question. She said, what's that? I said, well, I never met my biological father before. She said, you never met, and then she said that person's name. And I said, no, have you ever introduced me to him before? She said, he was just running around doing this, doing that. I said, let me ask you the question that I really want to ask you. I said, is it possible that Mutulu Shakur is my biological father? So her response, she hesitated for a second and she said, yes, son, yes, that is your biological father. So at first instant, I got upset, I got flooded and things like that. But I was raised to make sure I always have respect towards my parents, my elders, you know, things like that. So I didn't show my frustration and my being upset. I just said to her, well, I'm not going to stop until I find my biological father. So now when I went to work, I have a homegirl that works with me. I asked her, listen, Murky, can you look up this name for me? And then when she looked up the name, I went back to my office and she said, Ty, I got the name and the address. So when she got the name and the address, I went back to the office and I wrote him a letter right then and there. I didn't tell him that he was my biological father. I was asking him certain questions about the surroundings and family members and things that I know in the circle. Come to find out, Mutulu Shakur lived right next door to my family house. So that threw me for a loop. So I put all that in the letter. And then at the end of the letter, that's when I asked him, is it possible that you're my biological father? So about a week later, less than a week later, I received a letter. And inside the letter, it read, on top of it, yes, son, wow, finally got my son back. I am your biological father. Here's your family names and numbers. And on the top was Afeni Shakur. The next was Setra Shakur, Mopreme Shakur, and the list went on, you know? And then that's where the connection started, that I started going to visit him. We started communicating through phone conversations, and he started enlightening me on more family and friends. So as far as me being raised in a political arena, no, I haven't, you know? And just recently, I asked my mother that profound question, like, why did you never tell me who my biological father was? Just like the sister said a few minutes ago, is that a lot of things was going on back then, and they was really doing things to, you know, the babies of political prisoners and stuff like that. But I didn't get that from my mother at that time. Once I found out who my biological father was, he said, make sure you call your sister. So when I called Setra, she had told me, listen, mommy got a plane ticket for you and your wife to come out here. So when I got out there, I had I don't know if you ever seen Antoine Fisher. So I had an Antoine Fisher moment when all the whole family came around to meet me, and that blew me away. But at that time, Afeni wasn't there. She was at her house down the dock. So as time going on, we got to like maybe 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, and my sister Setra grabbed me up, said, come on, y'all gotta come see mommy, meet mommy before she go to sleep. So me and my wife went down there to meet her. So when I went down there, you know, I was a little bit, I'll be honest with you, I was a little starstruck in my mind as we walking. That was like, wow, mama about to meet the, you know, legendary Afeni Shakur. So when I got to the house, she was sitting on the couch. When she was sitting on the couch, she stood up and she put both hands on my face, looked me up and down, and she said, wow, You are one of ours. And she gave me a warm embrace hug. And she's right before she sat down, she went to a like a picture cabinet, and she took out a picture of her, Tupac, and my sister, Setra. And she said, I want you to keep this picture right here. And that's what I did. But when she sat down, she said, I want you to do me a favor. So I asked her, what's that, Mama Faye? She said, I want you to go home and tell your mother you love her and you're not mad at her. I didn't understand why she said that, because I never told her how I felt about the situation. So then I asked her, Mama Faye, why would you say something like that? She said, because your mother is a stronger lady than a lot of us ever be to have you underneath the wraps for so long, you know. And I believe if you didn't ask her the question, we still wouldn't have known about it. So you coming around at the right time, and you got nothing but love from us for your family. We love you, and you know, just keep pushing forward. Proud of you out here. So that's my part of my upbringing as a quote unquote political child. You know?
Wow, amazing. So that's it's amazing that you're able to find your family, discover that within the last couple of years. I'm sure that's changed your life quite a bit. Where
Still meeting more.
and it really opened up a new world to you, as well as a whole group of folks that are now your new family, right? So.
Absolutely.
So next, we're gonna have Kasise share some of her experience growing up with revolutionary parents.
Yeah, well, for me, not just being a revolutionary child, but being born a revolutionary baby. For me, when I was born, yeah, like the FBI was there when my mom was about to deliver me, and they were looking for my father. My father was underground and part of the Black Liberation Army, and so there was always tension from the time of my birth. You know, Kasise means this war, and so there was a war going on at that time between the police and the Panthers and our communities. And so for me, like even my earliest childhood years, I went to court a lot when my father had been arrested, and also my father was on trial with Asada. So I experienced seeing my father being beaten. There was a time growing up, just as a toddler, that my mom really had to decide what her position was, because here she is raising me, and I'm seeing so much devastation as a little girl. And this is before I even started attending elementary school. So I spent a lot of time, even with my mom, but underground, I spent time with my grandmother, and my grandmother was like my second mom, because there was one time that my mom took me to court, and when I came home, my grandmother said, "What did you do? Where did you take that child?" So I had seen a lot at a young age, and then things started to shift for me. I remember, because again, I grew up in Queens, and I remember. So my father, also, just to give you a little backstory, so my father was arrested when I was like 1971, and that's when I was born. And so I spent a lot of time going to see my father in prison, and my mom always tried to make that experience joyful as much as she could. She would pack little lunches for me and say, "Oh, we're going to see your daddy." And I remember just seeing him. We would sit outside. There was one prison where we sat outside, and there were benches and stuff. And I just remember feeling so much joy, just to see him, to hug him, to kiss him and stuff. And but growing up, there was always that feeling of like, I know my parents are Black Panthers, I know my father's in prison, but then in school, it's like, is this something that I want to share with people? And so I also experienced seeing just like there are newspaper, articles and again, just like what Teresa talked about, it's like your parents are considered criminals. And so, so there was always the duality, like being a child of Panthers and then trying to have this normal life. In elementary school, like, again, I was taught a lot to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So I was in an all-white school, and I had these badass Panther parents and raised by other Panther women with other children and cubs. And there were certain things we just couldn't do. I was more afraid of my mom than my teacher. And so, so I just remember like being in school and being like in third grade, and we had to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was like, I'm not gonna do this. I'm in the auditorium and like, I'm not doing this, even growing up, like if my mother went underground and I had different names, like there was just like a certain code, and I just listened to her. Then at some point, like we moved, so my father is still in prison, and finally he gets out, and it's like, oh, my father's out of prison. So it's like, now I get to have my family, and then we moved to Brooklyn. And in Brooklyn, I felt good being a part of just a community. Grew up in Clinton Hills, and just being part of a community of other Black folks, and I never really talked about my father's past. I went to school, even years later, friends of mine were like, you never told me that, your mother and father were Black Panthers, or your sister's Kikuyu, and her mom was a Asylum Shakur. And I was like, that's not something I just go around sharing. But you have to understand, it's like I was also raised to just with code and dealing with surviving, and it's, again, I think over the years, my parents really like wanted me to have a normal life and to give me the things that they fought so hard for, and so I did, I went to camp, and my mom and my Aunt Amy took my cousin Javan and I to Broadway plays, and they wanted us to have experiences. And the way they got into those plays, like my mom and Amy being the women that they are, they did not have to pay all the time to get us, to get us this art experience. So yeah, I think it was really challenging. Again, it's like being a child or being a baby, seeing what I saw, and then growing up and trying to live a normal life. And I think in my teenage years, I was very resistant. I didn't want people to know like who my father was at that time. And it wasn't until I went to college and took African American studies that I started talking about the Panthers, and I started talking about Assata's book. And then I was able to like feel comfortable around people that embraced Black Panthers, that loved and supported Black Panthers. So yeah, it was a different experience, different kind of childhood for me, and even when I was a little girl, I went to go see my father in prison, actually at jail. And my mom and I were in a room, and my father was getting his GED, and they said to my mother, like, oh, we're gonna let you see your father, in a few minutes or whatever. And they didn't. They kept us in a dark room. I peed on myself. I was traumatized. I was so scared. And my mom, she was nervous because she knew once my father saw how I reacted to being locked in a room, like in a cage, and not, and once my father saw that, he was going to be so upset. And then my mom didn't also want to see my father be beaten either, you know. So, but just over the years, again, like just getting the opportunity to share these stories, you know, with people, and knowing that my father, the sacrifice, the dedication, the resilience, the soldier in him, you know, the love that I received from both parents, you know, it's just, and he's gonna always be proud of who he is and who he was during that time, you know, that he wouldn't, I've asked him, he wouldn't change anything in terms of, you know, the choices. I mean, the choices that he made, you know, I think people really need to understand that, you know, because definitely what we're going through today in terms of this war, they decided to fight back.
Mhm. Well, you know,
But here I am today. Here
Yeah.
I am today, and I'm proud of my parents. I'm proud that my name means this war.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think there's definitely sounds like, you know, there's been a lot of growth in terms of just kind of grappling with you know, that relationship you have with your dad, and what people know or don't know. It seems, yeah, it can certainly be very taxing. But I'm glad, you know, that you know, everyone, you guys are embracing, you know, the struggles that your parents have gone through, and in many ways, you guys are doing the same thing, right? You guys are embracing that challenge, embracing, you know, having a position on where things need to be. Um, so we're gonna have Mike Africa Jr. Share a little bit about his experience growing up as part of the Move family. Mike?
My experiences growing up as part of the Move family was like, you know, in Move, we were very different. We were unique to the people that were looking at what we were doing. So John Africa, you know, taught Move people about natural law, about life, and about doing things as natural as possible. So one of the things that was the first thing to change on us was our hair. And because we had natural hair, we had natural locks. And like today in 2020, that's a common thing to see people walking around with locks. And, you know, you can't watch a sporting event without seeing people running without dreadlocks flying around as they're running around. But back in 1982 and 83, locks were not popular. So like I experienced the discrimination from folks when it came to, I'll be back. When it came to, just so, you know, I'm gonna call you. No doubt. So I experienced a lot of, you know, discrimination because of my hair. Move experienced a lot of that, and then not just that, but also our diet. You know, eating raw food. Raw food restaurants and vegan restaurants are, you know, all over the place in 2020. But in 1982, I can assure you that people looked at raw food as something wrong, something dirty, something, you know, that you're not supposed to do. So growing up in Move, my experience with the public was very uncomfortable. But as a member of Move, people in the organization were very loving and very giving, very kind people. And they nurtured us with a lot of healing and love and all of that. Of course, we have our problems just like any other family, but the people were very kind and gentle with us, and, you know, just giving us the kind of love and support that we needed growing up. So, you know, and then I think the biggest, like, thing that stands out in my childhood, that thing that stands out as the most effective thing that like shaped my thinking and my feelings was when my family had that bomb dropped on them, and, you know, all my brothers and sisters, 11 of us were killed. You know, so that shaped my thinking and gave me a lot of insight on the system and the danger in it and how they will treat people, you know. But, you know, my life in MOVE as a MOVE member has been great throughout my childhood, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think, you know, MOVE has done really amazing work to be able to also get all your political prisoners out of prison. So that's definitely something to be commended. It's really been amazing to see over the last couple of years how you know, you guys have been able to reunite with one another, and that's what we're really trying to fight for all the political prisoners. And next we're gonna ask Kikuya to share with us what it was like to grow up as Assata Shakur's daughter.
So it definitely was like a twilight zone. Like, you know, as I remember as a kid, it kind of felt surreal. It kind of felt like a movie, you know, like I remember my grandmother always trying to explain it to me, like, oh yeah, your mom was a freedom fighter, and then, you know, of course, you know, she was liberated from prison, and it just sounded like this can't be possibly real, right? You know, and I just remember kind of feeling kind of sarcastic about it, like, what do you mean? Like, how could somebody be liberated from prison? Like, how does that make any sense? I know about prison. I'm a kid, but I still know, what do you mean? I remember vaguely visiting my mother in prison. You know, it's been so many years. I'm not sure what's real and what's sort of been told. Like I remember when she was in Virginia. She was in prison in Virginia, and my grandmother, she became very ill. She had a lot of medical issues and severe asthma, and just like the heaviness of the moment just sent her to the hospital. And I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know how it all ended or where I went, but I just remember like being terrified. Like, my mother's in prison and my grandmother's like having like a serious attack, and just the heaviness, you know, going to prison was heavy. And you know, when my mother, I mean, I know she's written about it, like that I really could not process it as a kid, like that I actually, you know, had moments as a little girl kind of saying to her, like, you can get out. What do you mean you can't get out? Come on, let's go. You know, I can, you know, I just came in here, I can go. You need to come home with me. And I know that was just so traumatic, you know, for her, you know, to hear from her daughter that, you know, she, you know, she can't possibly understand why her mother, who loves her, can't come home with her. My mother was liberated when I was 5. And yeah, it was, it was like all hell, you know, broke loose. You know, basically we were under surveillance. I remember my grandmother, you know, just the paranoia. I think the apartment next to us, we lived in the Bronx, we lived in Co-op City. I think the apartment next to us was empty. And I think, you know, my grandmother always talked about that they were doing surveillance out of that apartment. I remember you know, trying to process that as a little girl, and just kind of like my sister was saying, just kind of be normal. So I remember sharing this with one of my friends. I think it was after my mom was liberated. I'm not exactly sure, but I had told her, my best friend Tammy, I told her something about the story, whatever I could have processed at that time. And I remember that we got into an argument, like a regular kid's argument on the playground. And, you know, we were, you know, telling each other words or whatever. And then all of a sudden she shouts out, well, at least my mom is not in prison. And I was mortified. I was just so mortified. I couldn't even agree to it, even though it was true. I couldn't acknowledge it. I was like, no, she's not. No, she's not, you know. After my mom was liberated, we didn't know where she was, you know. So 5 years go by, and I, you know, I don't remember exactly, you know, directly talking to my grandmother about it, but I knew at some point she really thought she had died. And so our conversations were more about, grieving that, something must, she must have died. She must have been killed by now. It's 4 or 5 years later, we haven't heard anything. So I definitely believe that my mother had died. My father, I haven't really talked about my father because I didn't know my father. I have no memory of going to see him in prison. I don't know if that actually happened or not. I was raised by my maternal grandmother, so of course there was a relationship with my mom. But I know that she was terrified, right, of having any relationship with other political activists because of the heat of the situation. So definitely after my mom was liberated, there was no there was no meeting my father. Like that was like off limits because the main concern was just keeping me protected and just being afraid that somebody would try to do something, that somebody would try to like maybe, I don't know, kidnap me or do something to get to my mom. So years go by, and then I was 10 years old and we get this phone call. I had been prepared for the phone call. So my mother had contacted my aunt, my great aunt, my grandmother's sister, who was also my mother's lawyer for a lot of her life. So she had, they had had a conversation, and I think we went to her office, and my mother was going to call. So the phone rings, and is this woman with kind of an accent. Like I remember thinking that as a little girl, like I'm like, she kind of sounds not American or and then I think the realization sank in at that point that I can't remember what my mom looks like. Like by that point at 10, I was like, I don't really, I don't know this woman who's on the phone and saying, hi, my baby, I miss you so much. I love you. It was just the realization set in that, wow, I don't really remember what my mom even looks like by that point. So then after that, it was kind of a whirlwind. I didn't have a birth certificate because my mother had me, when she was in prison. So we had to get a birth certificate. And I remember my aunt going around trying to get the birth certificate and a passport because my grandmother had always promised my mother that if she ever was in a position to raise me, that she would, make sure that I was with her. So within months, we were on a plane and we went to Cuba. So I mean, my life changed, tremendously, at that point. It was a necessary experience for me, because I had only known my mother theoretically, right? And, for a kid, trying to process, your parents really love you, but they can't be there. You kind of get it, but you really don't get it. So living with my mother was really important to kind of have a tangible sense of a relationship, a tangible sense of her love, that she had wanted nothing more than to raise her daughter and to have those tough conversations, because I was not nice. I was not nice at 10 years old, being reunited with my mother. I gave her hell for like about a year or so until I finally, let down my guard because I was just so angry. I mean, like we had those conversations like, well, and I was kind of mouthy. I was like a mouthy child. So I was like, well, why would you have a daughter if you couldn't even raise her? If you were going to be in the movement and all that, why would you do that? And then, kind of just over time, realizing that my mother and my father could never have in a million years understood where their life, would have went. They were trying to struggle. They were trying to just respond to the injustice that they had experienced and witnessed since birth, growing up in the 1940s and 50s. and, they felt, that there was no way to live without struggle, right? But they also wanted to live and love, and so I was a part of that, right? So I think one thing that struck me about meeting my mother was, my family, I grew up in a very loving family, but we had a lot of issues because of all the trauma, and I just remember how consistent my mother was at trying to show me that she loved me, and just kind of taking away that, in everything that she had been through, I mean, she would only talk and give me like just little glimpses of, certain experiences about her being, tortured in prison and solitary confinement and male prisons, being fed glass. She loved to talk about how much she fought for me to be born, because when she was first pregnant, they tried to give her laxatives so that she would have, said she would miscarry, and she was just filled with so much love, just love for humanity, just love, for life, and just really appreciating the fact that she had this chance to really, be my mother in person. So yeah, so I spent 5 years. It was just like, I got there in, I think it was February, and then by September, I was going to a Cuban school speaking Spanish. I had like this intensive Spanish class, and then I was just kind of thrown in. And I remember sitting in the car being like, no, mommy, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I'm so scared, because I got to speak Spanish. And, just being immersed into another culture. And then kind of also the difficulty and the guilt of leaving, because I did leave. I lived there from when I was 10 to 15. And it was, oh, did something change? Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I lived there from when I was 10 to 15. And I think one of the hardest things was when I, told my mom that I really needed to go home, because, living in exile, living in another country is a huge adjustment. And I kind of, I'm African American. This is the culture that I identified with. This was the culture that I was raised in. I was raised by my grandmother, and I wanted to go home. So that was like the hardest thing, is kind of, knowing that I was kind of the most important, like lifeline to her, and then kind of leaving her alone, So yeah, so my childhood was was crazy. It didn't make any sense, to kind of even try to explain it to someone. And then at 15, I never met my sister. Maybe we met when I was a baby, but I didn't remember. And I never met my father. So I did at 15, I met my sister and my father. And yeah, my sister and I, we became really close. I'd always wanted a sibling or somebody to share the experience with. So that was really, powerful for me. And then, definitely with my father, I have always regretted that I did not spend as much time with my father. So that is one of my regrets, that I never really got to know my father the way that I wanted to get to know my father. But yeah, it was crazy childhood, crazy.
I just want to say, when there was a time when our father and myself, we met Kikuya at MoMA. I'm trying to think which museum, and he was so excited. We lived in Brooklyn, and we took the train, and we walked through the Central Park, and I was like, Daddy, it's okay. Don't be nervous. You're gonna see Kikuya. And then we got to the museum, and he was so happy to see you. Yeah, he loves you so much.
I definitely feel that now. I think, when we talked about it, I think as a child I didn't quite understand my relationship with my father.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like because he was incarcerated again, I think I missed out on an an opportunity to get to know my father. But
And-
yeah. Mhm.
And you know, when he came home too, is when Assata was liberated. So there was so much.
Right. No, the first time, yes,
Yeah,
definitely. Right. The
I
first time,
know.
there was no way. I mean, the heat on us was just out of the world, out of this world. I mean, the FBI, we were being surveilled heavily. My grandmother was being harassed. Yeah, police coming to her job. It was just crazy. So, yeah.
But that's one of the things I don't understand is if our peoples are really going out to really help everybody, why are the police and FBI really, trying to do harm to them, and to the family? That didn't make sense to me. And I'm learning all of this now. So we have the people out there protesting for the same reasons on why our parents was pushing forward. The people out here now, they're not doing no crime. They're not doing nothing negative and stuff like that. They want the liberation of our people. We want equal rights and everything like that. So where is the crime in that? There's no crime in that, So that whole dynamic of, what's going on nowadays definitely have to change. So, I just needed to add that on because it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating. A lot of us are stripped away from our family, from our loved ones and stuff like that, just because they want nothing but positive and, for us to have everything that everybody else has. That's why I truly support all of our families and other families that's really on that front line trying to make that change. And I believe that change is going to happen. We just got to stay focused and diligent on what's going on. Even though, what happened to the young man with the knee on the neck right there, that right there was the focal point on breaking a lot of things, because I believe it's the visual that allowed the change, because our brothers and sisters have been shot down, going through a lot of things. That was, it's wrong, absolutely wrong. You're not supposed to shoot our people, you're not supposed to do it. But by that, and we have to give a shout out to that person that had that camera that took that shot of that police with the knee on the neck, because if that person didn't take that photograph, that video, would we be really pushing as hard as we're pushing right now? But that magnified the fact that that's racism right there. I studied that footage over and over again. And if y'all look at it, this police was so uncomfortable with the knee on the neck that he had to reposition the knee on the neck to squeeze even harder. So if that's caught on camera, yes, that is an outrage right there. So it was that visual that made this outcry the way it is, And I mean, unfortunately, it had to happen this way, but I truly feel that it's going to be a change because of that. And by that change, they speak about changing policies. So when we speak about changing policies, we have to speak about freeing our political brothers and sisters from captivity, because those are the reasons why they are in there. They in there for our freedom. So when they at legislators, when they doing certain things to change the policy, that have to be on top of the list as well. Let's free those brothers and sisters that are incarcerated because of helping, trying to free our people, trying to get equal rights for everybody.
So speaking to that, I mean, how have these recent Black Lives Matter and anti-police brutality protests and actions, how have they? I'm just kind of curious as how you guys have been either participating or not participating. Obviously there are strong connections between the movements of your parents and what's going on right now. So can you guys speak a little bit to that? And we'll open it up to whoever feels comfortable discussing it. Yeah, I think it'd be, it's. I know that Mike was just saying that he was at a rally earlier, how do you got, what are the tangibles that are coming out of what's going on?
Well,
I'll be honest. Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, sister.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Okay, I'll be honest. Normally, I would be out there on the front lines, but today I'm not. It's been many years of this type of injustice, and when you're on the front lines, especially with a family member in prison, it can take a toll on you. Going back to one of the statements that was made, I had asked my dad the same thing. Why did you have us 4 children and then you're out there fighting, and you have us, and my mom is without a husband? And he said, I couldn't, and it's what tore my anger away from my dad. My dad said, I couldn't leave this rotten system for you to grow up in. And it hurts my heart because my dad has been in jail 48 years. So he didn't abandon his family, but he truly felt in his heart that what he was doing would make a change. There would be a change for us. So presently, I'm not out there on the front lines. I would love to be there. Yes, I'm admiring from a distance what the youth are doing, and I just feel like also I want my dad to come home. My dad is suffering with stage 4 cancer, and he's 76 years old, and I don't want anything to be used against me, because I know we're still being watched and our calls are being listened to. Because just 5 years ago, my sister and I was on the phone and I hung up. But the authorities were on the phone and asked my sister, oh, your sister is out there. She's out there doing stuff for your dad. We want to talk to you. What can you tell us about her? And here's our number. My sister said, nope, don't want your number. Not going to talk to you. And when my sister told me, I was furious, because I would say, why didn't you get their number? Because I will tell them myself to back off. And my sister said, it wasn't necessary. They're listening anyway. So with that happening about 5 years ago, I have to watch what I say on the phone, even in my home. It's a tragedy that I'm like locked in a prison myself. I'm trapped in a cell with my dad. But I admire what's going on. And if I can help from a distance, I definitely will. If I'm forced to get out there, oh, I will. It's not like I won't, but I will. I see this change. Okay. All right. I'll let the next person speak.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hey, Teresa, I've been on so many marches with you, and side by side and one behind the other and just rolling. And like to see these protests happen the way they are all over the world, like it's vindication, because, when we first started marching, like when we were marching in the 90s, you saw a lot of people for certain people, but you didn't see a lot of people for all people. And so like for me, it's like vindication to see so many people that didn't really believe us when we talked about the terror that the police were committing against the people. Like a lot of people just didn't believe it. They didn't see it. It's like Talib said, like without those cameras seeing this stuff, I mean, even like people like Will Smith, who don't say a whole lot when it comes to political issues, even he said something like, he said racism is not, what do you say? Racism is not happening more, it's just getting filmed more or something like that. Like that's the truth. and like, for me to see all these, the protest that I was at today stretched about 5 or 6 blocks with no breaks in between. And people were like, we couldn't even hear or see the people in the back, and we couldn't hear or see the people in the front because there were so many and they were so far apart. And all for one purpose, to speak out against the injustice in the system. And there were every color people, every gender of people, you know, every kind. People were joining us. They were, as we were marching, they were on their porches and on their doorsteps, and they were coming into the audience, into the crowds with us and marching with us. Even one person that tried to like kind of disrupt the event, you know, that was quickly snuffed out, and he was like, you know, put in his place. You know, it was just to see all of these people protesting and to hear the names that these people, these young people, I'll tell you what, these young people are so knowledgeable. They are so brave. They are so encouraging and inspiring for me. I mean, when I was a young person, I was out there with them, but the level of understanding that they had because of the education, the true education that a lot of the elders in the community and the activist community are spreading out to people. We have seen within the last like 20 years some major changes, and those changes are like coming together in the millions of people that are protesting all around the world. Frank Rizzo's statue has been removed. That is amazing. And like the call that I've been putting out to the people is apology without action is meaningless. Frank Rizzo was the police commissioner in Philadelphia. He was the mayor in Philadelphia twice. And, you know, if you take a statue down, then that means that you recognize that it shouldn't have been there, and you recognize that he made mistakes, and you can't clean up the mistakes by taking a statue down. You clean up the mistakes by releasing the people that he unjustly put in prison, like Teresa's father. You know, and that's what we're calling for. Apology without action is meaningless.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Accountability.
yeah, I would definitely agree that the events that have been happening since the murder of George Floyd, one, have been so emotional. I feel like I've been crying and crying and crying. I think the only validation, I mean, there is no silver lining for my mother's story, in the sense that these years have gone by. We can never get those years back. She has gone a lifetime of being isolated from her family, from not knowing her grandchildren. Wow. It's so much has been stripped from us, and she has been vilified in such a horrific way that the only validation of her life is change. That's the only thing that can make this feel better, that she gave her life for our children to have a better future. And so any kind of change is hope that the world that she envisioned could one day be possible. So it is so important to me. It is so important for me, from my sons, from my daughter, just the idea that, you know, we are at this point being heard and forcing the issue, because I think that's a lot of what the Panthers did, is force America to hear the issue of, we cannot be brutalized anymore. We are not going to just stand here and be brutalized and tolerate the systemic racism that has been forced upon us since slavery. So it is very hopeful. You know, I think that you know, it just adds a little bit of a silver lining, like every bit of change that we can try to affect, you know, it's what she would have wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of protests where they are just chanting her words in the streets. So I think there's definitely some vindication there that what she's said and how she lived her life rings true to the folks out in the streets, right? So, you know, and I think that's important.
I definitely believe that her name and her struggle lives on, because everywhere that I go, I hear about Assata stories, history, or you need to read Assata's book. And, you know, so even though she unfortunately is not on the front line right now and pushing, she did her work already. She planted the seed and everything. So her struggle lives on regardless, Queen, regardless. My situation on not really being out there to push for, you know, our people on this front line here. The reason why I'm not able to is because I was asked to sit still. And when the family tell me to sit still, is because of my father's in a delicate situation right now. Any little words or phrases or any type of situation could have him not be released. For example, 3 years ago, he was supposed to have been released. He was supposed to have been out the door the next day. And they decided to keep him because of, quote unquote, how he signed the end of his letters, stiff resistance. How are you gonna keep somebody in prison just because of how he signed the end of his letter? So certain interviews, I have to monitor what I say. You know, I really have to straddle the fence on certain interviews, like such as this one right here. If I were to say the wrong thing, or the right thing, but the adversaries would say that, damn, well, he said something derogatory or whatever the case may be, let's keep him up in there longer, you know? So my position of marching and protesting and stuff like that, I'm for the people. I'm for and when I say the people, it's not a color barrier when I say the people. When I say the people, everybody that's pushing for equal rights, you know, social justice and things like that. So I had to feel my inner soul. The other day, I did go out to a march and I felt real proud and happy. But the thing about it is, I kept my mouth shut as much as possible, because you never know where the cameras are and how they're going to decipher certain things that is said. So my main point is for my father to be released and other brothers and sisters that's been in the struggle and in captivity for all of these years for what's going on now. It's time for them to come home. I'm not just lobbying for my father, I'm lobbying for the liberation of all that's going through the struggles that they are going through, because it's not cool. While they up in there, and people that's champion them, they can't really pull them out because of whatever reason, you know? So the only way we could really help our people that are incarcerated in captivity is what we are doing now, you know, bringing awareness to a lot of people. And to be honest with you, we have more people in our corner now opposed to back then. Why? Because the legislation and other certain people are in office that's really able to make that difference. But the difference don't start until we make it start. The difference isn't only the marching that's going on. I feel that we have to hit them where it hurts, and where it hurts is their pockets. And when I say their pockets, we must buy from each other. We must support our businesses, you know, like for the sports players and people that's in celebrity status. They need to wear items from Black-owned companies And when you do that, it's crippling our economy from the Gucci's, the Louis, and all this other entity. That's the only thing the hierarchy really respect is that dollar bill. So if we take that dollar bill and keep it in the communities, yeah, they really have to listen to it. So now, instead of wearing these certain things, let's have these sports players and entertainers wearing things of what we like, you know, and then promote it, you know. Yeah, go get this Black-owned clothing. Once you put that on, once a celebrity put it on, everybody's gonna swarm to that. And so now, there we go. We help it change the dynamics of the economy.
So let me just interject real quick. I see we only have a
I
couple.
want to say something too, just about,
Sure.
can I just say too?
Sure,
Because
absolutely.
I was out protesting last week, and I too have, in terms of positioning myself, I've experienced and I've seen what, in terms of like my dad, Kikuyu, and our father was rearrested. He's somebody out of prison and then rearrested in 2003, and now he's sentenced to life plus 10. And so that
You're muted.
I'm muted because the phone rang. And so in terms of the way I position myself, yes, I will go out and protest because I support and I'm overjoyed with the global movement, and it's about time. But I also know, and I know the devastation of what it's like to experience this police brutality, experience this system where your loved one can be snatched from you. And that's something that our family has experienced that they never forget. So it is about us being strategic in how we're going to move forward, because like our father was living a normal life, and his case was brought up again, and then he also refused to agree with bringing Assata back to this country. And so, you know, it's like that's a deep pain that we've experienced, you know, like looking at my sister cry, and there's such devastation there, but we have to have hope. And it's wonderful to see all the young people involved, you know, and just being consistent, you know. It's not just enough to protest. It's true. It's like, in terms of legislation, what are we going to do? You know, what are the actions? What are the actions? What are the results that we want? So I actually had emailed a father about George Floyd, and he said he's really proud of us. And I think it's platforms like this, just educating people so they can hear and they know and they can connect that the struggle, what the images that we saw in the 60s are the same images that we see now, you know? So yeah, we have to continue this fight, you know.
Absolutely.
So we only have a couple of minutes left, but I do want to have you guys just at least give us a quick update on your folks, and let us know, or let the audience know, what they can do to support them and their campaigns for freedom, as well as how they we're going to see a lot of future current and future protesters incarcerated, and how can we find ways to support them and their families?
Well, I know, even just talking about my father in terms of support and stuff, like he's had so many medical issues too. And I think that's the urgency too, is that our fathers are elders, you know, they're grandparents, and they have suffered. The best way to support, I would say, is to continue writing letters. I'm building a website for my father, you know, I'm campaigning. And I guess, Teresa, if you want to talk too about the PSA, that we're doing a lot of the Camp Panther Cubs. We're all Panther, not just children whose parents have been incarcerated, who are in prison. We really want to get our message out there so that people know about their medical care, getting them free, having them come home. But one of the ways, again, is to write, and it's to write my dad. And his information is on the Jericho Movement page. To continue to write, because that's another thing too. They need letters. They need to know they're behind that wall. They need to know that they have support out here. And then I'm also campaigning and sending him funds too. So, yeah.
Right. So, as far as my father, I spoke to him last night, and I told him about this interview today. I asked him, "Was there anything you wanted me to let everybody know?" He just wanted me to tell everybody that's listening that he's so proud of everybody that's really pushing out here for the betterment of our people. Of course, he kept it, brief because of what I was just saying earlier, that, they just looking for any little reason to keep him up in there. When he way past his parole time, he's over eligible for compassionate relief, and they aren't letting him go. So the most he can do, like the Queen said, he loved to have letters. He loved to, of course, financial support is definitely, warranted. If you want to support Dr. Mutulu Shakur, you could go to Family and Friends of drmtulushakur.com, or you could just go matulushakur.com and everything will pop up. And if y'all, need any information from me, please contact me and I will fill y'all in with anything. As far as everybody on the panel, my hearts go out to all of y'all. I'm learning more and more about our people each and every day. As I said from the beginning, I wasn't raised into a political family or the family of the struggle. And if anything, I'm saddened about that, because I would have known a lot more to help a lot more. But unfortunately, my life was the life of crime, and I'm not proud of that. And one of the reasons I believe is because a lack of a male figure in the household. And a lot of us are lacking the male figure in our household. So we have to find ways to connect to make a better life for ourselves. So, not to take up too much of the time, yes, if you would like to support my father, he definitely he's just appreciative of any little thing, and what he usually do and is dear to his heart is always thanking. Those has been backing him for all these years. Even those that had to sit down for a minute because of this travel been so long, over 33 years, he still thank you, even if you're not able to support. The way we are able to support him is doing exactly what we are doing, trying to do our best for a better tomorrow. So with that, again, for everybody that's on the panel and the brother that's narrating everything, we appreciate you, and we appreciate everything that's going on in the Shakur family. Peace and blessings are out to all of y'all.
Thank you, Talib. Teresa, you want to share, what's the current campaign and how folks can support Maroon? You're muted.
My apologies. My cat was all up in the way, and I had to mute myself. But in all of our cases, our parents are elderly, and I'm too. It's one of the reasons why I'm not going out on the front lines, because I don't want something to be held against me. As I told you earlier, Jorge, that someone called saying they want to start a Maroon encampment. And I'm like, don't do that. That'll be totally held in a bad light against my dad because we want him released. So I can ask, and I want to thank Jericho again for giving us this platform, and also the people who have supported us throughout the years. But we're asking here in Pennsylvania, a number of groups, that the governor, because the Pennsylvania governor can sign off the release of a prisoner. There are a lot of steps to getting to having someone released on compassionate release. This is beyond compassionate release. We're talking about elderly people. And if we don't care about elderly people, that's a problem. We have to make people in position be concerned about our elderly prisoners. So therefore, here's a number to the governor's office. It's 717-787-2500. And our governor here in Pennsylvania is Governor Wolf. And I've attached, and it may seem corny, these face masks, but with my dad dealing with stage 4 cancer, his immune system is so compromised that you know, I can hear it in his voice. His voice has changed. His voice is it's not the same. It's
all right,
fried.
sister.
It's
Right.
fried from chemo. So yes, please, whatever you can do, go to the Maroon Network on Facebook, and please, we're desperate. We're grown adults, but we're still those children who don't have their parents. So yeah, I just want to thank you and thank everyone out there who's listening. And if you can get involved, please do.
Thank you, Teresa. Mike, you want to share any updates from your end?
Yeah, you know, it's crazy. Like, you know, my fight has been to get my parents home from prison after 40 years, and they finally got home after 40 years. And I feel so like weird saying what I'm about to say, but like they still on parole for 58 years. And it's crazy. Like, I want all attention from what work that I'm doing to shift to Maroon and Mumia and Mutulu. Like
Thank you.
I'm doing what I can to like whatever I can to like make like Kamal Siddiqui's voice elevated. If that's the move that we're making to do that, that's where my attention is going for Assata. Like, but I want to do whatever is strategically advantageous for the people that are still behind the walls. Like, my parents are not free, but they're home. And even though they got 58 years left on parole, there are still people that are not even with their families. So my attention has gone toward trying to do whatever I have to do and find any way and any method that I can to elevate the voices of the people that are still behind the walls, the people that are still in exile. And that's my mission, to free and support those people that are still in those positions. And I was out there at the protest today, and I was talking about that exact thing, you know, because I think the fact of the matter for me is that the evidence is clear that those revolutionary people have birthed these great people that are on this Zoom call right now. And the work that we believe in to support and build community with our people and help our people, that speaks to the level of greatness of our parents. And that is the example of true revolution. And it is very contrary to the image that the system tries to put on what revolution is and what Black people are about. And so, you know, I just want to lift up the voices of our brothers and sisters that are still not with their families. And that's what I'm fighting for.
Salute, King. Salute. Yeah.
So for the last, thank you, Mike, and thank you for everyone else. But I also want to do a real quick, give you guys an opportunity to make some announcements. I know that Kasese and Teresa and some other folks have been trying to work together on putting together this Panther Cub project. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about it?
Teresa, you want to talk about?
Okay.
Okay. Just so we recently had a Panther Cub meeting last Saturday, and with so many of our elders and serving these sentences, we thought about putting together a PSA and reaching out to everybody so that we can bring awareness and get our loved ones home. So we're working on that this weekend, and
Yeah.
we're gonna get great results too.
Fantastic.
I also just wanted to say too that first of all, I don't want to end this call because I feel like just the comfort and love from everybody, and I just think we need to continue to connect, and then share our stories. I think too, like part of my healing process is that I put on a one woman show so that I could get out the stories through storytelling. We are storytellers, and just bring an audience in to again educate people on and let people know, because our parents, again, just what they did, what they're doing, what they've done, and just bringing that awareness to folks. Because I think when I did my play, there were so many artists that just had no idea, like, well, who are our freedom fighters, political prisoners, or Black Panthers, or I didn't even think they had children. It's just, there's so much that they don't know. So we just got to keep on keeping on,
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
all power to the people.
Power to the people.
Talib, I understand you're also working on a documentary about your dad. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. I'm in the process of doing that, waiting for funding to push it forward. We might reboot the name and the direction on how we're going to go with it. Because once I put the documentary together, I sent it to my father to ask him if this is feasible. Do you like what I put together? So he had said, yes, I love what you put together. However, let's change it up a little bit. So I said, what do you mean by that? He said, because the title of it was supposed to be Truth and Reconciliation, Dr. Mutulu Shakur. So he said, no, make the documentary about how you found me, how you found your father, and those travels will lead to truth and reconciliation and who I am. And that will make it more powerful of a documentary miniseries. So I said, wow, yes, we could do that, whichever way you see fit, because the main objective to the documentary is to shine light on who my father really is, opposed to the narrative that they see on the YouTubes and all the other social medias. So once I did my research and history about who my father is, I said, wait a minute, what I read and I seen on the YouTube, and then when I read his case and all of that, it doesn't weigh out. It doesn't weigh out. So I did my studies to really change that narrative, and then spoke to a lot of family and friends that grew up with him. And the same people that grew up with him is the same people that I grew up around. So it blew me away to find out, like, wow, all this time you are family members and friends, and none of us really knew that Mutulu was my biological father. So when they found out, that blew them away. So I said, wait a minute, we have something here. So that's one of the reasons why I'm able to connect the dots to make this powerful documentary to really help free him. And then there's individuals that was locked up with him that are free now, and he had changed their life around. So these individuals are in the documentary. We did maybe 5 interviews already for the documentary, but it's many more to come. So the moral to this documentary is to shine light on the struggle of what a political figure have to go through, eliminating being around their family's life and, getting to know, your family later on in life, So in due time, this documentary will be put together the way it's supposed to be, and prayerfully it'll be real soon once the funding comes. But the material is already there. The material is ready to go. So stay tuned, and the title will be different. I'm trying to figure out what specific title that I really want for it. I already have something in mind, but I don't want to let it out yet. You know what I mean?
Well, we're all looking forward to it.
We appreciate your support.
All right. So any last announcements you guys want to share before we sign off?
I just want to say to everybody on here, like I shared this with Kakuya and Kasise when I first met y'all at the New York Panther at the event for the Panther Cubs. I never met other people that was so closely related to me in experience. And I've always felt like kind of out of place, even if I was in a room full of people. But but when I'm around y'all, this whole people that have the same experiences as I have had growing up, it just feels so good to know that I'm not alone and that I got support. And I just want y'all to know that y'all not alone. Y'all got my support 100% all the way through. Everybody on this thing, and a whole lot of other people that are not here today that struggle because of this unjust system. Y'all all got my support. Whatever you need that I have, you got it.
Well, I can honestly say you're sincere about that, brother, because you and I have been in contact for a little while, through texting and phone calls, but we haven't been able to connect physically yet. And I can't wait for that day to happen, because I know that you have a lot of wisdom to really share with me and to really help me through travels that I may be going through, because you really live this life. You really had to deal with the struggles of being a child of a political prisoner and stuff like that. So I'm definitely looking forward to linking up with you in the near future, brother.
Me too, bro.
And the rest of the sisters on the panel.
Hey, look, the sisters here, man. Hey, look, sisters make things happen, bro. And listen, I'm trying to tell you, man. The sisters get it in. We're gonna keep on moving with it. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
All right. With that, I really want to thank all the panelists for participating in this conversation. You guys have been fantastic, really wonderful, and really, very vulnerable to share all the stories that you guys have mentioned. So, we're, the Jericho movement is, we're committed to supporting the political prisoners, their families, their loved ones. So we're right there with you guys in this struggle. And hopefully to all the viewers, you guys can find out more about the political prisoners on our website. Look them up, do some reading. It can change your life. So I want to thank you guys all, and really, really, really appreciate you guys participating.
No, before we close, the reason why I had said to Mike, what I just said to him, is because we was in communication. As far as the rest of the sisters on the panel, I would love for us to exchange information some kind of way, to whereas I can be in communication with y'all, so we could help rise each other up and, support each other, morally, and, because there's a lot of, just like the sister, she was really emotional about her travels, where she had to go through not being around, Asada and stuff like that. I be having a lot of pent-in emotions as well, not knowing my father until 4 years ago. So there's a lot of cry inside of me that I need to release, but I need to release it to those that understand. You know what I mean? And the only ones that really understand are the ones that really travel, knowing they parent around that time, but couldn't connect with them because of where they are. Me just finding out who my father is right now, y'all could help me out a lot. You know what I'm saying? So with that alone, my sisters, my queens, much blessings to you, all of y'all from the Shakur family. Keep pushing forward.
Well,
Yes.
always, right?
Always, yeah.
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you, guys. And all power to the people.
All power
Out
to the people.
Thank you.
All
Thank
power to
you.
the people.
All right. You guys have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
All right.
You too. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.